The lion never loses sleep over the opinions of sheep, but he never forgets who tried to cage him. They thought you were easy prey. They thought if they humiliated you, mocked you, broke your spirit in front of others, you'd vanish, quietly, silently, like so many before you. But what they didn't realize was this: you weren't standing there alone. The force behind you, the universe itself, was watching. And what they were really fighting was not just you. They were fighting a design greater than them. They were foolish enough to challenge the current of destiny itself. That was their first mistake. The second, thinking you'd forget who you are. Chosen one, your discernment didn't just save your peace, it saved your life. That deep discomfort you felt in your gut, that wasn't paranoia. That was a warning, a flash of truth cutting through the fog of deception. What you walked through wasn't some random betrayal. It was a humiliation ritual, quietly staged, socially disguised, but deeply evil. They wanted to see you fall and smile while doing it. This was spiritual warfare carried out through manipulation, betrayal, gaslighting, and public shame. But you made it out, not because you're lucky, but because you were aware. Before we go deeper, make sure you like and subscribe. This message isn't just for you, it's for every chosen one still in the fire, still wondering what's happening to them. When you engage, you help this truth reach more souls who need it now. Every like signals to YouTube that this isn't just content, it's a call to awakening. Now let's talk. They tried to use your empathy as a weapon against you. Your loyalty became your noose, your silence, interpreted as weakness. But what they underestimated was the power of being chosen. See, being chosen doesn't mean being loved. It means being tested, marked, watched, targeted. The universe sets you apart, not for comfort, but for conflict. And those who are not ready for your light will always try to dim it or destroy it. Let's be clear, they didn't want to just hurt you. They wanted to humiliate you. There's a difference. Hurt can happen by accident, but humiliation, that takes planning. They studied you, observed your weaknesses, used your past, twisted your words, set the stage. They wanted your breakdown to be a performance. They wanted an audience. But what they got was a survivor who refused to bleed on cue. You were walking through a staged downfall designed to strip you of your self-worth. That's not exaggeration. That's the truth. And here's what makes it worse. You still doubted your light. You still asked, was it me? You still felt guilty for leaving toxic people behind. Let me tell you something. Stop mourning the loyalty you gave to snakes. Stop apologizing for walking away from fire that was only set to burn you. The power of being chosen is that your glow disturbs their darkness. Your presence stirs something ancient in them. Envy, fear, hatred. You don't have to say a word. Your existence alone reminds them of what they aren't. They see you rising and they panic, because every time you get back up, it exposes the weakness in their plot. And deep down, they know. If the universe is still backing you, it means their mission failed. They wanted people to laugh at you, but now people are watching you rise, and it burns them. That's why they stalk your pages. That's why they mimic your style. They can't stand you, but they can't look away. Because deep down, they thought your fall would be permanent. What they didn't see coming was your rise becoming their greatest punishment. Understand this. The universe never abandons its chosen. It watches in silence, lets things play out, and then moves in ways that are unseen but undeniable. People who thought they destroyed you are now haunted by your peace. They toss and turn, wondering why nothing sticks to you, why you still smile, why you still stand. It's not luck, it's alignment, it's discernment. and it's protection not meant for everyone. And you, yes, you, stop pretending you're not powerful. Stop shrinking to fit places that were never meant to hold someone like you. Stop acting like you're unworthy of the calling on your life. You were marked for this. That's why they came so hard. That's why the attacks weren't random. That's why the betrayal cut so deep. They needed you to break, so you'd never become what you were always meant to be. But you didn't break. You discerned, you pulled back, you paid attention to the patterns, you walked away when everyone else told you to stay. That's power, that's survival, that's purpose in motion. And now, every fake smile you saw, every backhanded compliment, every setup, it's all exposed. Your clarity is your revenge. This wasn't just a rough patch, this was a battle between dark energy and divine timing, and you stood still long enough for the storm to pass and the truth to rise. Don't forget this, don't ever downplay this. You didn't just survive a situation, you survived a ritual meant to ruin you. And now you rise, not just as a survivor, but as proof. Proof that when the universe marks someone as chosen, no weapon formed against them can prosper, not because they're lucky, but because they're aligned, awake, and unstoppable. So if this hit you in the gut, it's because it was meant to. This message isn't just content, it's confirmation. You didn't imagine the ritual, you didn't overthink the betrayal, and no, you're not crazy for pulling away. If you've made it this far, it means the truth is already rising in you. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you know you weren't just attacked, you were being initiated. Every scar was part of the setup. And now, it's time to break it down, piece by piece. If you're truly chosen, something deep inside you won't let you click away. Let's get into it. Number 1. They tried to hang you in the town square, but the rope snapped mid-air. They built a stage for your downfall, but forgot the universe controls the lights. This wasn't a bad day. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some petty misunderstanding that went too far. Let's rip that illusion right out of your mind right now. What happened to you was calculated, deliberate, and sickening. They picked the place, they picked the people, they picked the moment. It was an ambush, a public sacrifice, a ritual designed to shame you, silence you, and destroy your credibility in real time. And they wanted witnesses. They wanted your pain broadcasted, your breakdown turned into a spectacle. But you didn't give them the show. You didn't fall. The rope snapped mid-air, and now they're the ones exposed. You were never crazy. You were never imagining things. That cold look they gave you, that weird shift in the air before everything went left, that sick feeling in your gut as they smiled in your face with knives in their back pocket. That was your discernment screaming. That was the universe sending the alarm, get out. And you listened, maybe not loud and proud, maybe not with confidence at first, but you pulled back, you grew quiet. You stopped explaining, and in doing that, you ruined everything they set up. They thought your silence was submission, but it was preparation. They thought your confusion was weakness, but it was recalibration. What they didn't know is that when a chosen one pauses, the universe shifts. Timelines move, energy adjusts, and that little plan they were so proud of. It began to unravel the moment you leaned into your gift instead of their gaslighting. Because the truth is, you were never alone in that room. While they were scheming in whispers and shadows, the universe was recording every intention, every backdoor move, every fake laugh, every staged interaction. And now it's all falling apart. Let's talk about the real sting, how they wanted to see you break. Not just stumble, not just cry. They wanted to watch you lose your mind. They needed to see your light flicker out in real time. You think they just accidentally grouped together to turn on you? You think it's coincidence how your deepest fears got used as weapons? No, this was engineered. People with no real connection suddenly misunderstanding you at the exact same time. That's coordination. That's orchestration. And the sickest part? They did it with smiles on their faces and lies in their mouths, hoping the world would watch you self-destruct while they pretended to be concerned. But here's what they didn't see coming. You had something they couldn't calculate. Discernment, not suspicion, not paranoia, but that rare ability to feel energy before it speaks. You saw the shift before it became a storm. You sensed the setup before the curtains rose. And even though you questioned yourself, even though you doubted your light, you didn't give them what they wanted. You didn't break on cue. You didn't scream. You didn't snap. You survived. And now, they're the ones looking over their shoulders. Chosen one, let's address the other part that hurts. The part where you questioned yourself. Where you thought, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I pushed them away. No, you didn't push them. You saw through them. You saw what they were doing, and instead of letting it continue, you got quiet. You walked away. You chose yourself, and that's what exposed them. So stop apologizing for saving your own life. Stop mourning the people the universe removed. You weren't just being dramatic, you were being protected. You keep doubting your power because you think it's supposed to come with applause. It doesn't. Real power often comes with betrayal, with exile, with silence. They didn't hate you because you were weak. They hated you because the universe whispered secrets in your ear that exposed their masks. They couldn't fool you, and they couldn't control you. So the only thing left was to try and destroy you publicly. They thought if enough people joined in, it would make the lie believable. That's why the crowd showed up so fast. That's why the betrayal came from multiple angles. That's why you were the only one confused while they were all suddenly on the same page. But what they underestimated was how the universe moves for the chosen. You see, when the universe chooses someone, it doesn't just hand them blessings. It hands them battles. It marks them, sets them apart, and the protection that comes with it is violent. It doesn't always come wrapped in peace. It comes wrapped in exposure, isolation, and unexplainable turns of fate. They thought they were playing with you, but they were messing with a system far bigger than their egos. They tried to trap you in a burning house, and the universe sent the storm to drown the fire. And now, they're sitting in the ashes. If you're still wondering why here's the truth. Because you carry something they never could. Light. Not the fake kind. Not the social media kind. Not the kind you pretend to have. The kind that blinds liars. That burns manipulators. That calls out hypocrisy without you saying a word. Your very presence was a threat. Your silence was louder than their noise. That's why they tried to shame you in the first place. Because they couldn't dim you privately, so they tried to destroy you publicly. But here's the twist. Your survival became your spotlight. You didn't fold. You didn't beg. You didn't crawl back for validation. And now you're rising, stronger, wiser, cleaner, quieter. And that silence? It's not weakness anymore. It's power. It's control. It's knowing that the same universe that let you see the storm also walked you through it untouched. To the chosen ones who still doubt, how many times does the universe have to save you before you stop acting like you're unworthy of that protection? How many setups have to fall apart before you realize they weren't just coincidences, they were cosmic interventions? You weren't saved just to survive. You were saved to remember. Remember who you are. Remember why you're here. And remember that your enemies didn't fail because they were weak. They failed because they tried to fight what was never theirs to control. You walked into their trap and walked out untouched. You stood center stage in their ritual and didn't bleed, not because you're lucky, but because you're aligned. And they're haunted by the fact that even after all they did, all they planned, all they threw at you, you still shine. That's the curse of betraying a chosen one. The pain never sticks to us, but it returns to them, multiplied. Number 2, they knocked like old friends, but came carrying poison in their smiles. Not everyone from your past wants closure. Some just want a second shot at breaking what they couldn't finish the first time. Let's not sugarcoat this. That reunion wasn't fate. That text, that DM, that "Hey stranger" message that came out of nowhere, it wasn't the universe giving you another chance to heal. It was bait, a setup, a Trojan horse wrapped in fake nostalgia. You felt it in your stomach the moment they reached out. Your body went still, your energy dropped, your mind remembered the damage, but your heart, the part of you that's still healing, entertained it. You doubted your instincts again, and that's where we need to talk. Because chosen one, what is it going to take for you to stop doubting your own light? How many times does a snake have to shed its skin in front of you before you stop calling it a friend in new clothes? They didn't come back because they missed you. They didn't stumble upon your profile. They didn't just think of you. They resurfaced because you've been glowing louder in silence than they ever did in a crowd. They felt the shift. They saw your peace. They noticed your detachment. And it scared them. Because when a chosen one detaches for real, it sends an earthquake through every soul that ever fed off your energy. Let's break this down raw. They didn't return because they love you. They came to study you, to test the lock, to check if the gate they once broke through was still open. But this time, they didn't use aggression. They used nostalgia. Remember when I just wanted to check on you? You crossed my mind today. No, you didn't. That was strategy. That was spiritual fishing. That was an emotional setup disguised as a walk down memory lane. You weren't paranoid. You were right. And the fact that you even questioned that shows how deeply their first betrayal fractured your trust, not in them, but in yourself. And that's what makes this whole thing so dangerous. Because when someone breaks you and walks away, it hurts. But when they come back acting like they never did it, and you start rewriting history just to make space for them again, that's spiritual suicide. That's how chosen ones lose their crown, not to enemies, but to familiarity. And let's be honest, some of you entertained that message because a part of you still wanted closure. You wanted answers. You wanted to believe maybe they've changed. Maybe it wasn't as bad as you remember. But let me hit you with this. Closure is not a conversation. Closure is a decision. You don't need their truth to validate your healing. You don't need to revisit hell just to prove you survived it. Let me say this louder. They didn't change. They just got more careful. They remembered what worked last time, and they adjusted the strategy. Last time they came loud. This time they came soft. Last time they attacked. This time they smiled. But the energy underneath? It's the same. The darkness never left. It just got dressed up in better words. You keep forgetting the power of being chosen doesn't just make you a target, it makes you a mirror. When you show up, people are forced to confront who they are not. That's why so many return, not out of love, but out of obsession. They need access to your light because theirs went out a long time ago. And instead of doing the work to rebuild themselves, they'd rather drain what you've rebuilt. That's not love. That's leeching. You want to know how dangerous you are now? They had to come in disguise. They couldn't just come honestly. They had to wear your memories like a costume. That's how bright your discernment has become. And yet, you still second-guessed it. Why? Because you're lonely? Because you missed the connection? Because a small part of you still wants someone to come back and choose you right this time? Let me break your heart with the truth that will free your soul. They were never supposed to choose you right. They were meant to break you, to test you, to awaken the very power you're sitting in right now. If they had treated you right, you would have stayed small, comfortable, distracted. But they dropped you in the fire, and you didn't burn. You forged. Stop giving out second chances like you're trying to win them over. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. The universe already chose you, and when the universe aligns with your spirit, anyone who tries to re-enter without the right energy will be rejected like a virus. The reason it felt off when they messaged you isn't because you're bitter, it's because your energy evolved and their mask didn't. And don't let the apology fool you. Words are cheap, so is timing, especially when it shows up right as you're elevating. That's not an accident. That's spiritual timing on their part, not the universe's. The universe already closed that chapter. You're the one flipping back the pages, looking for a feeling that no longer belongs to you. You were making peace with the past. You were rebuilding, you were healing in silence, and just when the light started coming back into your eyes, they knocked, not to congratulate you, not to reconnect, but to reinfect, like a virus that mutated and hoped you forgot what the first wave did to you. Chosen one, this is your wake-up call. Your power is loud now, your growth is undeniable. And if you're not careful, nostalgia will drag you back to graves you already buried. Learn to tell the difference between a lesson and a test. One teaches you, the other checks if you were really paying attention. You've come too far to fall for the same tricks in prettier packaging. That "hey stranger" wasn't a lifeline. It was a hook, and you felt it. Deep down, you knew. That cold chill, that tight chest, that voice saying don't do it. That wasn't fear. That was the universe shielding you. You think it's cruel that you keep losing people, but the truth is you're not losing them. They're being removed before they can strike again. Stop doubting your gift. Stop questioning your knowing. When the universe chose you, it installed a radar in your spirit that can't be turned off. That's what makes you dangerous. That's why they're coming back in waves. Not because they miss you, but because they miss the version of themselves that only existed when they were attached to your light. But here's the truth. That version of you doesn't exist anymore. And no matter how many times they knock, no matter how sweet their voice sounds now, you owe them nothing. Not a response, not a reunion, not even closure. You gave them access once. They used it to try to bury you. And now, you owe them silence. You're not cruel for protecting your peace. You're not selfish for blocking what once broke you. You're not cold. You're finally clear. And when the chosen one gets clear, the whole system changes. So next time they knock, let the wind answer. Because the version of you they're looking for doesn't live here anymore. Number 3. You thought it was awkward energy, but it was the predator sizing you up. The gut doesn't whisper lies. It screams truth that your mind isn't ready to hear. Stop brushing it off. That weird tension you felt in the room, that shift in their eyes when you weren't looking, that pause in their tone that made your stomach twist. It wasn't awkwardness. It wasn't just your anxiety. That was your intuition roaring, and you almost ignored it. Again. You thought you were being paranoid. You thought you were overthinking, too sensitive, too suspicious. But what you were feeling wasn't emotion. It was spiritual radar. It was your internal warning system screaming at you, something's not right. Because it wasn't right. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't just energy. That was an intention, sharp, calculated and dangerous, disguised under casual smiles and fake concern. You felt it, and instead of trusting it, you doubted yourself. Again. Why do you keep questioning the one thing that's never lied to you? That uneasy energy you couldn't name. That was predatory. That was someone with a script in their head and a plan in their pocket. And you were the target. The bait wasn't words. It was familiarity. It was subtle manipulation. They didn't come at you directly. They came soft. They came quiet, like a shadow, like smoke under a door. They hoped you wouldn't notice the way their energy wrapped around you like a cold fog. But you noticed. Because you've been here before. You've seen the fake smiles. You've felt the eyes that didn't match the voice. You've experienced the presence that drains instead of uplifts. And yet, a part of you still asked, am I just being judgmental? No. You were being spiritually accurate. And let me say this without mercy. Doubting your intuition is what keeps putting you back in rooms that were never safe. You think discernment only shows up when things are loud. No. It shows up in the stillness, in the glitches, in the split-second flickers of energy that don't add up. That's the universe testing your awareness. And you keep failing by giving people the benefit of the doubt when you should be giving them the door. You weren't imagining it. That eerie off-center vibe. That was the mask slipping. That was the spirit underneath revealing itself. And your body caught it before your brain could process it. You felt the shift because your soul doesn't lie. So, stop making excuses for what your spirit has already labeled as unsafe. That moment wasn't awkward. It was strategic. A predator will always try to blend into your comfort zone before they strike. So ask yourself, how many times has your body screamed, but you smiled anyway? How many times did your intuition tell you to leave, but you stayed to be polite? You're not here to be polite. You're here to survive. You're here to thrive. And if that makes people uncomfortable, so be it. Your discernment is a divine shield, not a flaw. And every time you dismiss it, you lower your guard and invite in something that was never meant to reach you. The next time something feels off, don't decode it. Exit it. Number 4. They didn't hate you. They hated what you reflected back at them. You didn't change for the worse. You changed into a mirror, and they couldn't stand the reflection. Let's kill the illusion right here. You weren't targeted because you did something wrong. You were targeted because you did something rare. You evolved. You grew. You stopped playing small. You started moving different, thinking deeper, talking less, and glowing louder. And that transformation made you dangerous. You became everything they secretly told themselves they'd never be able to become. While they stayed stuck in cycles, you broke out of the cage. While they performed for the crowd, you started healing in silence. And the moment you began to rise without them, they felt it, not in their mind, but in their insecurity. You didn't leave them behind. You outgrew the illusion you were ever equal in spirit. So let's be brutally honest. They targeted you because your very presence is proof that their stagnation is a choice. That's why they whispered about you. That's why they tried to sabotage you. That's why they plotted. Because watching your glow forced them to look at their own shadows. And they hated you for waking something up inside them that they wanted to keep asleep. They wanted you to stay broken. They liked you better when you were struggling, when you doubted yourself, when you needed validation. when you had your hand out, hoping for crumbs of recognition. That version of you was safe to them. But the moment you started walking in your power, they saw it as rebellion. And to them, your confidence became a threat. So they tried to dim it, not with fists, but with whispers, with fake love, with twisted narratives. They tried to paint your growth as arrogance. They called your silence cold. They told people you were acting different. Damn right you were. Growth looks like arrogance to those who haven't moved in years. Let this sink in. They didn't attack you. They attacked the version of themselves that dies every time you rise. You became a mirror, and what they saw in your reflection, it made them sick. Your healing highlighted their wounds. Your elevation exposed their laziness. Your discernment revealed their manipulation. And instead of fixing themselves, they chose the coward's route. They tried to destroy the one who reminded them of what they could never become. You were the blueprint. They hated that. You were proof that trauma doesn't have to turn into toxicity. That pain can become power. That you can be betrayed and still not become bitter. That's what made you a threat. You became unbreakable, and that's what they feared the most. So next time you ask, why me? Flip the question, why not you? You were chosen not because you were weak, but because you were built to stand in the fire and not melt. You weren't targeted for your flaws, you were targeted for your evolution. And that's the kind of power the enemy can't afford to let walk free. Number 5. They didn't come to reminisce. They came to record your fall. When the devil can't destroy you in silence, he invites you to your own execution dressed as a reunion. Stop romanticizing what was never love. Stop dressing up the past with nostalgia just because it showed up in softer colors this time. That wasn't a catch-up. That wasn't closure. That wasn't some warm moment from the universe telling you it's time to reconnect. That was a premeditated trap, a performance wrapped in false smiles, familiar faces, and familiar smells, designed to lower your guard just long enough to strike. They didn't want your presence. They wanted your exposure. That's why they brought the alcohol. That's why the lighting felt intentional. That's why they kept steering the conversation to the past, to disarm you, to make you feel safe, to make you remember a version of yourself that no longer exists. But you felt it, that tension, that shift, that sinking feeling that whispered, "This isn't right." You didn't know what it was at the time, but your spirit knew. Your intuition clocked the setup before your brain could find the words. And still, you doubted it. Again. Why? Because they smiled, because the setting looked harmless, because deep down, a piece of you still wants to believe the people who hurt you didn't mean it. Let's stop lying. They meant it, and this time they came prepared. They were counting on you to drop your guard. They were banking on that old, trusting version of you resurfacing, the one that forgave too fast, the one that let loyalty blind their discernment. They didn't come for memories. They came with motives. You were walking into a scene that had already been written. They were watching how much you drank, watching what you said, watching how you moved. And if they could have captured even one moment of weakness, some slurred words, an emotional outburst, a breakdown, they would have had their footage, their evidence, their little trophy that said, "Look, the chosen one isn't so powerful after all." And you still think this was random? No, this was a ritual. Humiliation disguised as reconnection, shame bait wrapped in fake warmth. And if you hadn't felt that cold gut drop and pulled back in time, you would have given them what they came for. Chosen one, they don't want your peace. They want proof that you're faking it. They want receipts, a clip, a screenshot, anything to break the illusion of your strength. Because your transformation made them feel small, and instead of rising with you, they decided to drag you back down. But it failed. Again. And you owe that to one thing only: your discernment. That quiet inner voice that kicked in the moment the energy shifted. That part of you that said, "Don't drink that. Don't speak on that. Don't stay too long." You didn't need evidence. You didn't need logic. You needed alignment. And that's what saved you. So stop mourning the moment. Stop romanticizing the reunion. It was never about what was. It was always about what they could take now. And they failed, because you finally chose yourself over your memories. And that's why you're still standing. Number 6, you weren't attacked because you're weak. You were chosen because you're a threat. The fire didn't come to burn you alive. It came to reveal who you've always been, fireproof. Let's set the record straight once and for all. What you went through wasn't punishment. It wasn't karma. It wasn't, "Maybe I deserved this." No. That voice in your head whispering, "Why me? What did I do to attract this? Kill it." That's not truth. That's trauma talking. You were targeted not because you're broken, but because you're built. Built different. Built strong. Built chosen. You were marked the moment you woke up. The moment your soul started rejecting what the world called normal. The moment you began seeing through the illusions, through the games, through the masks. That's when the attacks began. Because when a chosen one activates, it sends shockwaves through the system. You don't just take up space. You disturb everything false around you. And the system, both physical and spiritual, can't stand what it can't control. You weren't punished. You were tested. That humiliation, that setup, that betrayal, it wasn't random. It was precision crafted to break anyone who wasn't built to carry the kind of weight your calling requires. That's why it came through people you loved, through voices you trusted, through environments you once called safe. Because the test had to cut deep enough to force you to choose. Stay asleep or wake all the way up. And you may be shaking, may be crawling, but you chose right. So no, chosen one, you're not cursed. You're calibrated. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. Positioned for levels that most will never reach because they fold at the first sign of pressure. But not you. Because even at your lowest, you didn't sell out. You didn't turn bitter. You didn't become what hurt you. And that's why you passed. That's why you're still here. That's why their weapons failed. You've been looking at survival like it's just getting through. But survival as a chosen one is spiritual confirmation. The enemy tried to break you on a soul level and couldn't. Do you understand what that means? You're not fragile, you're forged. You're not soft, you're refined. You carry a power in you that bends reality, that breaks generational curses just by existing. That makes darkness flinch before it even enters the room. That's why you were chosen. Because where others would have collapsed under the betrayal, you rose in silence. Where others would have retaliated, you observed. Where others would have begged for understanding, you let the universe vindicate you. And that kind of strength isn't taught. It's born. It's bred through fire, isolation, humiliation, and still, you didn't let your light die. So the next time your mind tries to convince you that this was too much, that maybe you weren't strong enough, that maybe it would have been better if you weren't chosen, remember what you survived. Not by luck, not by chance, but because destiny requires you to be standing here, awake, aligned, and dangerous. You weren't chosen because you're perfect. You were chosen because you're proof. Proof that even after everything thrown at you, lies, setups, sabotage, heartbreak, you still didn't fold. You still hear the voice. You still feel the pull. You still walk with a light they couldn't put out. Chosen isn't a compliment. It's a responsibility. And now that you know why you were chosen, you better walk like it. Number 7. They had a whole system against you, but they forgot you were shielded by something they can't touch. When darkness organizes in layers, light doesn't panic. It just stands still and watches the entire tower collapse on itself. Let's make something crystal clear. What you went through wasn't some impulsive attack. It was a hierarchy, a structure, a chain of command built specifically to destroy you. You think it was just one person gossiping? No, it was a pyramid scheme of evil. At the top, the puppet masters, the ones too cowardly to strike directly, so they whispered orders into weaker minds. Then came the lieutenants, the enforcers, loud, manipulative, and desperate for approval. Beneath them, the bait, the fake friends, the concerned reconnectors, the soft-spoken manipulators who lured you back into the trap with kindness. And at the bottom, the passive audience, the ones who said nothing, did nothing, and let it happen while pretending they were neutral. This was war, organized, coordinated, intentional, and yet you survived, not just with your body intact, but with your spirit untouched. Why? Because while they were relying on their structure, you were backed by something they can't even begin to understand. You had protection that wasn't visible, but absolutely invincible. They played their parts like it was theater, scripts rehearsed, moves practiced, triggers pushed. They had it all planned, how you'd react, how you'd break down, how you'd isolate yourself in shame. But the one thing they didn't plan for was the shield around you, the unexplainable force that blocks what should have buried you, that divine recalibration that flips every trap into revelation, that silent protection that turns setups into exposure. You don't need to know how many layers they built to destroy you. Just know none of it was enough. Because when the universe marks someone as chosen, it doesn't need volume. It doesn't need a crowd. It doesn't operate on titles or rank. It moves in silence. It moves in strategy. And it waits patiently for the enemy to walk into its own trap, which they did. Every single one of them. Some with intention, some with silence, but all of them part of the same failed system. And you were standing there the whole time, thinking you were under attack, not realizing the universe was using you as bait to expose the entire network. So yes, it was a structure. Yes, it was deep. Yes, it had levels. But so did your protection. So does your discernment. So does your purpose. Every time they leveled up their manipulation, your shield intensified. Every move they made in the dark, your light caught it before it could land. And you keep asking why you're tired. You're not just surviving people. You're surviving entire systems built to erase you. Stop doubting your strength. You didn't just outlast petty drama. You outlasted a machine, a spiritual system of control built on deception and fed by the weak. And still, you walk untouched. That's not luck. That's legacy. That's proof. You were never outnumbered. You were just undefeated. They won't come with weapons. They'll come with smiles, but you're not blind anymore. The next attack won't look like a war. It'll look like a warm welcome with cold intentions. Now that you've survived the fire, chosen one, understand this. The enemy doesn't stop. They just repackage the attack. What didn't work the first time comes back in new form, with new actors and a softer script. It's not about force anymore, it's about infiltration. You're too strong to be hit head-on now, so they'll try to sneak in through doors you thought were locked. So how do you spot it before it lands? Easy. Your discernment is now your armor, and your attention is your weapon. First red flag, sudden reconnections. They'll pop up like they've been thinking about you, like the universe led them to you. No, what led them to you was your glow, your peace, your detachment. You've become a magnet, and not everyone drawn to you has good intentions. When people resurface out of nowhere, don't romanticize it. Analyze it. Ask, why now? Why me? What do they need access to that they can't generate on their own? If you have to talk yourself into trusting them again, that's your answer. Second, location control. If they're choosing the time, the place, the setting, be alert. The trap is always staged. Whether it's a party, a dinner, or a casual hangout, when they insist on controlling the environment, it's because they've already rehearsed the scene. That's not reconnecting, that's a setup. Your spirit will feel it. You'll get agitated. You'll feel foggy. That's not social anxiety. That's spiritual misalignment. Watch out for pushy friendliness too. The instant closeness, the over-the-top compliments, the forced warmth that feels just a little too much for someone who hasn't been around. That's not sincerity, it's seduction. Manipulative people use charm like a smokescreen, and if you fall for it again, you'll end up questioning yourself all over again. Real connection builds slowly. Manipulation demands urgency. If it feels rushed, it's rigged. Then there's the evasiveness. You ask a direct question, and they dance around it. You bring up the past, and they deflect. They're vague when it counts, and detailed when it doesn't. That's not healing. It's hiding. They don't want resolution. They want re-entry. They want access, not truth. And your soul knows it. Finally, the one you can't fake. Energy mismatch. When the words don't match the vibe. When they say all the right things, but your gut won't relax. When the smile's there, but the energy behind it feels hollow. Trust that. Trust the tension. Trust the unease. Your body remembers danger even when your mind wants to give someone a chance. If peace doesn't follow their presence, cut it off. You're not paranoid. You're prepared. And you've earned the right to say no without explaining yourself. The next attack will look like an opportunity. It will feel like familiarity. But now you see it coming from miles away. Because you're not who you used to be. You're not open for spiritual ambush anymore. You see now, and that's your greatest protection. Let them knock. You don't even have to open the door. They planned your public execution, but you became their living reminder that light can't be killed. They wanted your breakdown to be your legacy. Instead, your survival became their life sentence. It's over. Breathe that in. Let it settle. Let it hit you in the chest like the moment you finally exhaled after holding your breath for too long. You didn't just survive the ritual, they failed it. Every lie they told, every smear campaign, every cold setup dressed as concern, every trap disguised as reconciliation, it all collapsed under the weight of your truth. You weren't destroyed, you were delivered. The war is over, and you didn't just make it out, you won. But let's be honest, there were moments you thought you wouldn't. Nights when the silence felt louder than any insult. Moments when your mind turned on you, when you thought maybe they were right. Maybe you were too much, too cold, too guarded. Maybe you brought it on yourself. But those were lies planted in your soil to strangle your roots before you could bloom. They didn't want the real you to rise. Because if you ever figured out just how powerful you are, they knew the whole illusion would burn. And now look at you, glowing in truth, walking in clarity, no longer begging to be understood. You're not paranoid, you're aware. You're not isolated, you're chosen. This isn't a punishment, it's your confirmation. You went through the ritual, the trial, the storm, and you walked out with your crown. Dirty, maybe, bent, sure, but still yours, still on your head, and still undeniably earned. The humiliation was never the point. The point was the reaction. They needed you to collapse. They needed you to act out, explode, retaliate, because then they could say, "See, look what we had to deal with." But you gave them nothing. No show, no scream, no submission. You gave them silence, and that silence became deafening. It turned their script into nonsense. It exposed their roles in the theater they built to destroy you. And now, they're stuck with a truth they can't rewrite. You didn't die in the fire. You learned how to walk through it. Every eye that watched you hoping to see a fall is now witnessing a glow they can't stand and can't explain. That's the real victory. Not just surviving the attack, but shining harder because of it. You became everything they tried to kill, and then some. That's what haunts them now. Not that you got through it, but that you came out better, sharper, clearer, and completely unreachable. Chosen one, this is your proof that your discernment isn't dysfunction, that your boundaries aren't bitterness, that your intuition isn't imagination. Everything they tried to label as flaws, those were the tools that saved your life. They mocked the very gifts that ended up protecting you. And now they're choking on the truth. You don't need revenge. You are the reminder. You are the story they can't erase. You are the living proof that when the universe chooses someone, no system, no setup, no smear campaign can cancel that destiny. What tried to bury you only planted you deeper. So walk like it, stand like it, speak like it, live like it. The war is over. You won. Now shine like they never tried to turn off your light. And now that the truth is on the table, let this sink in. You were never the victim. You were the proof. Proof that light survives setups, that silence speaks louder than slander, and that discernment will always outrun deception. The war didn't destroy you, it revealed you. If this message struck something deep in you, don't scroll away in silence. Like this video, subscribe to stay aligned with the truth, and drop the number 77 in the comments if you know the humiliation ritual failed. Share this with another chosen one who needs the reminder. Your rise is already happening. Let's move.